Okay, welcome everybody. This is episode 2 of the Tide Hoops History Summer Podcast Series. As we mentioned last week, we are looking forward to this summer. We're going to talk to a lot of former players, coaches, fans, media members that know a lot about Alabama basketball. We are also proud to be the newest member of the Crimson Crossover podcast family. I'm your host, Michael Southern. This week, we are very excited to have Richard Hendrix. Richard, I've got a long list of your accolades here, so bear with me. I know I'm going to miss some of them, but for those who are not aware, which probably are not many, Richard is from Athens High School. He is, of course, an all-state performer, former Mr. Basketball in the state of Alabama, a McDonald's All-American. He played in the McDonald's All-American game, the Jordan Classic. Of course, he was a highly sought-after recruit. We'll talk about that later, but he did pick Alabama. He played for Coach Godfrey for 3 years, graduated in 3 years, became an all-SEC performer, got drafted by the NBA Golden State Warriors, also became a champion in European basketball. He is currently a basketball analyst for the SEC Network. And I do believe maybe this latest accolade may be your most favorite one, but you are soon to be inducted into Limestone County Sports Hall of Fame. So tell us about that last one, because I figure that one probably means just as much as all the others.
Oh, that one means the world, and it's been an exciting year. I retired from the game about 3 years ago, and you kind of forget about a lot of things you do as a player, but to get some acknowledgement now after the ball stops bouncing, being an SEC legend representing the University of Alabama, as well as now being in my county's Hall of Fame, Sports Hall of Fame, it's a tremendous honor that, for me, growing up in Athens, Alabama, it was a lot of people locally that really contributed into making me who I am and that I looked up to as a small child. So to be honored and enshrined with the other members that are on the Limestone County Sports Hall of Fame, it's a true honor.
Now, if I'm correct, I saw you tweeted this out, but the actual ceremony is going to be this Saturday. Is that correct?
Correct.
And
So
then, and I think the other great honor is, if I'm not mistaken, too, your dad is also a member of the Limestone County Sports Hall of Fame.
yes, he was inducted 2 years ago in the class 2 years ago. He's a longtime coach at Athens High School. I played for him. We went to back-to-back Final Fours, including the state championship appearance, the best finish that Athens High School has ever had at 33-3 as a record. He also won 3 state championships as the head tennis coach. And
Oh,
in his
wow.
playing days at Athens College, he led the NAIA division in block shots in the nation. So, a really good player, good coach, and just an overall history of his athletic commitment. He was acknowledged a couple years ago. So it's definitely an honor to join him as well in the father-son duo to be in the Limestone County Sports Hall of Fame.
Well, I know you're excited about that, and I want to congratulate you because like I said, I know that honor means just as much as everything else that we listed, and I know that when it's the people you grew up with that are honoring you, that means even more because they know the real Richard Hendrix.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
so one of the things there's a lot to talk about, but maybe let's go ahead and start here because this is obviously the most or the biggest topics going on right now. It's the current renaissance of Alabama basketball. If you look back at what has happened in the last 5 years, it is not hyperbole. It is not a prisoner of the moment. Alabama truly is achieving historic accomplishments, things that have never been seen or done before. Now, there are a lot of people, maybe the newer fans aren't aware of some of the tradition that exists, but at least for right now, in these last 5 years, what does it mean to you as a former player at Alabama to see your former school achieve what they're achieving now? And did you ever think, again, like me, someone who's watched the program for 30, 40 years, I always thought that we were just cursed and we were never going to get to the Final Four.
Well, first off, I'm proud of Nate Oates, head coach Nate Oates, and his staff, and everyone within the organization that has made it happen. As an alum that played there, you definitely feel a sense of pride to see them get it done, but you have to acknowledge the work that this current staff and the players that get it done on the court. So I have the utmost respect for what they have done, and I'm so proud to be an alum to watch what those guys have done. But the credit goes to them. It's good to see the Alabama brand on the national level getting the respect that it deserves. The feeling that I have as a former player is that what they have accomplished in recent years validates the program and the history of the program. And this is not a program that is some upstart program that has no history. There's a lot of history to Alabama basketball that goes back for several decades as one of the better programs in the SEC and one of the better contenders nationally. Even at some point in time, I've even heard people in circles say that Alabama basketball was more of a respected brand outside of the state than it was within the state. And that's just because a lot of times when you look at, the power of the football program and it just being in the region where football and the SEC is so strong, basketball oftentimes gets looked over. But now to see that they are being able to do it, and with football remaining a power, it's been able to elevate the program up to a level that everybody can really see it with the national exposure that you now have with bigger networks and television and things of such and social media. So it really, really is something that really allows Alabama to be a brand nationally that everyone can respect. But it's something I think as a former player, we always felt we should have been respected on that level.
So I can tell you, when the Final Four was happening, one of the things that a lot of fans, myself included, just absolutely enjoyed seeing were all the pictures like that you tweeted out, Coach Godfrey tweeted out, all the other former players that were there in Glendale that were sitting together there at center court. I know I had a chance to come over there and talk to you during halftime of the first game, but I saw all the players and the group there. You guys look like you were having the time of your lives over there.
Well, it was a great moment. And, I've always been a person who I can always see things in the distance, but at the same time, I love to take in the moment. I was sitting there and I was talking to a couple of my buddies, and I think I said to Chuck Davis, I said, I'm about to see if I can round everybody up in between the game, right, and see if we can get a group picture. And somehow I was able to find, players from all different generations that were in the area and try to get as many as I can. Got us all together with about 15 minutes on the clock before tip, and we were able to get some really good photos that I think are just frame-worthy pictures, stuff that just going to last forever. And it was great to see that as it was, I tweeted it out with the first tweet, how it just seemed to go viral within the
It
fandom.
did.
Everyone right there in the arena, just taking in that moment that we all got a chance to take in, and to watch Alabama give UConn everything that they wanted. It was just a moment that I knew that I had to be there, and I was glad that I was in attendance and to pull for my school.
So, for a lot of fans and former players, again, when Alabama got there, when I was getting on the plane in Birmingham, I was on one of the direct flights that Delta added, but all I heard all around me was people saying, I always said if Alabama ever got to a Final Four, I would find a way to get there. And
Yeah.
I think the sentiment was the same for former players and former coaches. I mean, if they had opportunity, they could find a way to get there. They were going to come to Phoenix because they wanted to see history, because it felt like to me, and you know better than anyone because you're a former player, but the players, they know how good the program has been, can be, and will be. But to finally get the validation, to finally get the monkey off the back of, hey, we are at a Final Four now. Auburn and Mississippi State, LSU, South Carolina, they can't say, hey, where's your Final Four? I
Right.
mean, that was just cathartic for so many people.
Right. Yeah, especially considering that historically Alabama is probably a better program than the others that have been able to get over the hump to have that Final Four in the resume. So now with the Final Four, you pair that with the SEC championships, the NBA draft picks, the legendary coaches, the all-time wins. Now you have something that you can really have that solidifies the program as a top-tier program, and the momentum that they have moving forward seems to be in a good position that they can continue to grow on that. So it's an exciting time. But, I'm proud for the players and the current staff members that are a part of it, because as you mentioned, the former players know what it's like to be in the program. We also know the blood, sweat, and tears that it goes into it to be a contender and to try to be a really good program. So I know that those players, those coaches that are giving it their all and were finally able to get over the hump, I couldn't be more proud for him, because I understand what you have to endure and what you have to go through and what you have to sacrifice to get to that level.
I know I've had this conversation with Coach Sanderson before, and obviously during his tenure, he had several teams that had the talent that I know could have gotten the Final Four. But when you're in the one game situation, the NCAA tournament is one of the most thrilling events and one of the most heartbreaking events because of the one and done. It's not like the NBA where you play a series.
Right.
Usually the better team wins in the series, but you truly can be the better team and have a bad day and your run is over. So to see the validation this past year, I know that again, I'm still in shock. I still have difficulty, processing that it actually happened. I feel like I'm going to wake up and like, did I just dream all this? Because, let me ask you this: did you ever think that you would see the day that right now Las Vegas betting odds would have Alabama men's basketball as a better betting favorite to win the national championship than Alabama football?
Wow. I didn't know that. I didn't even know that that was the case. But no,
Yeah.
I don't know. I ever thought I would see the day. I do think that that speaks volumes of the health of the entire athletic department. I mean, but Alabama and what they've been able to do to get to a Final Four and now to reload in this NIL era to have an opportunity where people think they can be a favorite to win a national championship, and they truly, truly feel that way. I mean, it's really outstanding.
Well, again, I never thought I'd see the day that Alabama basketball would dominate the sports media in May and June above Alabama football recruiting. But with the transfer portal and the number two recruiting class, that's exactly what's happened. And again, don't misunderstand. I'm a graduate from Alabama, just like you. I want all sports to dominate. I don't care if we roll a ball or a bat or anything out there and it says Alabama, then I want us to dominate.
Oh yeah.
But again, to see what's going on right now, it's a great time because I actually think there's strong motivation. I have high thoughts about the baseball team in year two and Coach Vaughn. So you've got Coach DeBoer, and now you have Coach Oates, going into his sixth season. So there's a lot of potential. I mean, could we really have the possibility that we could have the GOAT in football, the GOAT in basketball, and currently the GOAT in ADs? I don't know. That's just me throwing that out there.
I mean, it's a possibility. I mean, what Greg Byrne has been able to do with his hiring, and definitely elevating the entire profile of all sports. I mean, it's really impressive. It's at a time when I know when I graduated in 2008, Alabama was obviously a really good school, great program athletically. Every single program was a competitor in the conference, but it seemed for many reasons that it was almost like it was like a regional type feel to it, the prominence. But now, what it has risen to now, it seems it's a national level for every single program. I don't know if it's any different as far as the competition level of talent, because I think that all the programs were talented. It could be a little bit of the exposure, social media, SEC network, ESPN type of exposure where people can watch the games. All of those things play a role in it, but it's definitely got to be a fun time to be a student athlete at the University of Alabama right now.
Well, speaking of that, let me go back to your recruiting days. So, if I remember correctly, I know obviously you were a highly sought after recruit. We already mentioned all the success that you had as a prep player. I always remembered because, of course, I've been following the program for a while. That everything that I always read was that it came down between North Carolina and Alabama. How close really was it between North Carolina and Alabama for your final decision?
Oh, it's very close. And it was very hard for me to look at all of the facts that were lined out in front of me. Roy Williams coming over from Kansas, meaning his second year at North Carolina, and me being one of the main recruits that he was going for in that class. It was a hard decision to turn that down. You obviously you understand the tradition of the program. The visit that I had was great. I mean, you see that the level of respect that they have for basketball in that program. It was just something that I really, really strongly considered being a part of. But at the end of the day, I think the thing that really made me stay at home and want to go to the University of Alabama was the fact that Alabama started recruiting me when I was in ninth grade. And the loyalty that they had at every AAU trip, every big game in the state, to look in the stands and you see some member from the staff always had their eyes on me. And then you look at the run that Alabama was making throughout my time when I was getting recruited. You're talking about 2002, they're the SEC champ.
Yep.
I'm getting recruited
Yep.
as a freshman. 2003, they're the number one team in the country. 2004, they go to the Elite Eight. So when you look at it in hindsight, everyone always looks and say, how do you pick University of Alabama over North Carolina, this storied program? But as you mentioned, talking about, it's not hyperbole that Alabama is in a renaissance right now. To me, if you go back to a 15, 16, 17-year-old Richard Hendrix, a team that just won the SEC, a
Yep.
team that just had a couple of NBA draft picks in the first round and in the second round, and Gerald Wallace and Rod Grizzard and Mo Williams, National Freshman of the Year, SEC Player of the Year with Erwin Dudley, a guy who's similar build and style of play as well as I am. Uh, Chuck Davis leading the team to the Elite Eight in 2004, similar type of style. Going to be the #1 team in the country in 2003. So to me, Ronald Steele, the two-time Mr. Basketball, committing already, going to be there the year before. To stay at home, I felt like I could have the same exact situation that I would have at North Carolina, because this was a program that was on the rise, have a young coach in Mark Godfrey who's energetic, who's starting to get things rolling. And I felt I could be the piece that could get us over the hump to get to that Final Four and beyond. And then the pride that you would have by getting the University of Alabama, your home state school, to a Final Four, win a couple SEC titles, maybe get a national championship. Uh, you know, it's just something that I know would be cemented forever in the legacy of who I am in the history books. So, not to mention also, I had several family members and my two older sisters who were graduates from the University of Alabama. Those were the biggest reasons why I decided to stay at home. And, I don't regret the decision. It was a great experience for me as a student athlete. I loved the university, I loved the campus life. Unfortunately for me, we did not have the team success on the court that I would have wanted to have. I mean, individually, I think I had a strong career. I was a very consistent player. I was durable. I gave it all that I had, but I did not have enough to be able to help wheel our team over to the humps and to the levels that I would like to see us to achieve. But at the same time, it's a decision that I don't regret.
So that's an interesting point. Let me ask this question again. What would the 21-year-old Richard Hendrix at Alabama, say you're going into your sophomore or started your junior year, what would that Richard Hendrix do if we were playing today and you had the wild, wild west, which is NIL and open transfer portal?
Oh, wow. I mean, if I'm honest with myself, I definitely would strongly consider entering the portal. I mean, it has changed. It's a business now. And if you want to talk about business decisions, the proper move for most players is to do when they have leverage is to jump in the portal to leverage it. Now, I'm old
Yep.
school. I definitely look at it and think that people should have a little bit more loyalty to the school and to the coaching staff and to the continuity that they have and the legacy that they're building at the school that they're playing in. But if I'm honest with myself, if I go back to 2008 and I would have had the option to say, wow, I have NIL opportunities. I have the NBA opportunity that I can enter the draft and maybe I can get drafted, or I can enter the portal and I can leave and go to any other school I want to immediately and continue my collegiate career. If I'm honest with myself, it's something that I would have strongly considered, if not done, especially considering talking off about going off of a SEC season where I believe we were 5-11 in my last year, finished 16-15 as my junior year. So a frustrating finish, but you can always make a change. So if I'm honest with myself, I would have considered it just like anyone else. And I don't blame any player for getting in the portal. Maybe I might blame some of the reasons for which people get into the portal, um, but or disagree with them. But if you have the option, then you have to consider it.
So do you like this era, which people call more, obviously it's player empowerment. Do you like the lax rules of the transfer portal? Obviously NIL is NIL, but what about the rules now with the transfer portal where it's just unlimited?
No, I'm not a fan of it. First, the main reason I'm not a fan of it is because I come from an academic family. My parents were educators. My grandparents were educators. I've come from a long line of people who are of college graduates, and academics is something that's always been very important to me. And when you go to college, I think somewhere throughout this whole course of the NIL transfer portal situation, education has totally been lost. Going to
Absolutely.
school and actually having a student life, as a student on the campus, meeting other peers, having a goal to go and try to have a degree that you want to aspire to be a part of and have a career in that field is totally out of the window. I mean, now it's just pay for play. So that's the first thing that I look at, and I say that's what you're going to lose. But also, within that, I think if name, image, and likeness had come on its own, and it was true name, image, and likeness, where you're actually seeing people out here advertising for businesses or whatever, or on
Yeah.
billboards or whatever, then I think that would be a good idea. Or if the transfer portal had come on its own, where people had the mobility to change schools to where they desire to go play. But I do think the combination of the two at the exact same time, it just creates a situation where you're leaving for the wrong reasons in most situations. And school is something that's left totally behind. And you're always trying to make a consideration to go to another place just for another, for nickels and dimes. I mean, so I totally get it why players would do it, because it's a smart business decision. But this is college. This isn't business. This isn't the professionals. And there's no guardrails on it. There's no collective bargaining. There's no cap. And professional ranks don't even work like this. And it creates a false sense of reality as players move on to the professional ranks, that they believe they will continue to have these options when they're trying to play professional ball. I played 13 years as a pro. You'll never, ever have these type of options when there's a real professional system. So it could be something that I think has far more cons to the situation than pros, but it's hard for people to see that. I would also like to see that for people to have more of a reality of what a true college athletic on a high level college experience is really like. I think it's been sold that all of these athletes are there, playing for a bag of chips. And that's not the reality. It's an outstanding experience that they really provide a lot for you. And it's better than the pros for most people than it'll be in the future, to be honest.
I would imagine, and again, you can confirm, but the fact that you were able to graduate in 3 years means as much. That means as much to you as anything as all SEC or anything else, I would imagine.
Well, it was something that was a goal of mine. I came into college with a few credits, but at the same time, as soon as I arrived in Tuscaloosa, I never left. I stayed every summer. I trained in the off season
Oh,
with the strength and conditioning coaches. I went took summer school classes, and I passed them. It was just as simple as that. And I looked up at the end of my last year, and I knew I was on track to be done in 3 years even. Now you see far more people doing that. But at that period of time, 2005, 2008, that was not something that people are doing. You see a lot of athletes doing it now. They come in with more credits, um, early enrollees, all types of situations. But it was quite an achievement at the time and something I am proud of.
so the fact that you were able to graduate in 3 years, was that also part of the plan that you had already envisioned that you would probably play 3 years and then probably try to play professionally, or it just happened to coincide?
I don't think I had a game plan. I do
Okay.
think that I always wanted to be professional. I did always want to have to play in the NBA. And education was important to me. But since I was always going to be on campus and I figured I was taking classes, I might as well pass them, might as well make good grades and get as many credits as I can. And I knew if I did have an opportunity to go pro early, I wanted to have as much done academically as I possibly can to make it easier on myself if I ever did leave early and have to come back and finish my degree. But it did work out for me that I finished up in 3 years and graduated. And that was a main driver in which me making a decision to go ahead and leave early and turn pro.
Now, if I remember correctly, again, I know your junior year, obviously the team didn't have the success that you were hoping for, but wasn't the last game was that not the Mikael Riley tornado game where he hits the three to force the game in overtime and truly literally saved lives because there was what, an F3, F4 tornado outside the Georgia Dome?
We were playing Mississippi State for the third time that year, had them on the ropes. They had a really good team. We'd already won in the first round of the SEC tournament. We were hoping to make a deep run and try to get to the NCAA tournament by winning the league. And we have Mississippi State going into overtime. I think Mikael Riley hits the 3-pointer, sent it into overtime,
Yep.
which extended the play. But we were on the court, and I remember running down the court, and I was posting up or just standing in the paint. The point guard Brandon Hollinger is bringing the ball up the court, and we just start hearing something rattling. And you're looking into the stands, and you see the rafter, see the some banners and things just kind of swaying, and everybody's just kind of looking around like, what's going on here? Like, and then we start seeing people in the fans start coming down from the seats, like, oh, let's get down to the ground. Had no clue what. Now, this is the time before Twitter, before the
Yep.
smartphones that everybody had to be knowing what was going on instantly. I remember one of my teammates, he was like, I think it was Demetrius Jemison. He said, I thought it was Kentucky was playing next. He said, I saw all those fans. He said, I thought it was them making all that noise. And he was right. I mean, you really did think some fans coming in making some, you had no clue. And the next thing you know, things started falling from the ceiling, and we kind of jogged off the court and went to the back, and we were back there probably an hour before we came back and finished out the overtime period. We ultimately ended up losing the game, but it was definitely a strange feeling. Never been a part of something like that, but you know, it's just something that Mikael Riley hitting that three, and whoever it was, the journalist or whatnot who wrote that article, to realize had he not hit that three to send in overtime, that would have been thousands of people from Alabama State and Mississippi State, I mean, from Alabama and Mississippi State to be exiting the Georgia Dome out into the path of the tornado.
That's right. I remember I was watching that on television because I couldn't go. And I remember when all that happened and the TV announcers were talking about the building was rattling and that happened. It was just an unreal event. I It's not exactly the same, but I remember when I was really young, I was watching the 1983 Iron Bowl in Legion Field, Alabama and Auburn. And in the fourth quarter, the beginning of the fourth quarter, the two teams literally played through a thunderstorm / tornado warning. They never
Wow.
stopped the game. They never They played literally right through it, and there was a tornado very close to Legion Field. But again, this is 1983. There's no smartphones. There's no nothing. They were just
Right.
like, "Hey, it's pouring down rain. Keep playing." And that's exactly what they did. But
Right.
I remember the conditions watching it on television. So crazy times. I know that's a memorable game as far as because of the circumstances, but over your career, I don't know. This is probably a difficult question to answer, but do you have a favorite game, or was there an opponent that you really loved playing against that you always said, all right, maybe I'm playing Auburn, they're going to get everything I got tonight, or I'm playing Kentucky, they're going to get everything I got tonight?
Um, you know, in conference play, I would probably have to say that's a question I don't even know if I've ever asked. I've been asked that question before. The Florida teams were always good to play.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
When you look at, you know, in my 3 years there, two times they're back-to-back national champions, and so we played them in 2006 in Coleman Coliseum, and that was the last loss that Florida had before they went on to win, I believe, 10 games in a row to win the SEC tournament and to win the national championship. We played them again the next year on the road and took them down to the wire. We were actually up by 20 in the game in Gainesville, ended up losing the game. But you talk about a talent full field roster. They played really good basketball, well coached. It was just always a game that when we played against them, because we had so much talent as well, we just couldn't always been able to bring it out every single game against other opponents. But we always brought out our best game against them because we matched up well. You know, myself against Al Horford, similar type players, similar size. Jamario Davidson and Joakim Noah, similar size, similar type, you know, body style and things. So Ronald Steele had the advantage, but really good guard play against Torian Green, who was a really good guard. So, you know, matched up all the way around him. Alonzo G and Corey Brewer, every single position was something that we matched up well against them. But that was always a fun time. And those were a great group of Florida guys with great people and great coaches.
Those I remember those games, and you're right. Those were slugfest. Those reminded me of back in the early '90s when Alabama and Arkansas used to go at it. When Arkansas had the 40 minutes of hell, and then Coach Sanderson had his plethora of athletes, they would go at it. But those were some really good Florida Alabama games. It's hard to believe that Al Horford is playing in the NBA
Still
Finals.
playing. Still playing. It's hard for me to believe too. So sometimes I sit here and I watch these games and I sit there and I look at guys and I say, man, like And like Al Horford's still playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like these guys are old. Still out here playing. I've been done for a couple of years. And I'm like, yeah, it makes me wonder. I said, could I still play? That's what I asked myself. Could I still play?
Well, you look like you could still play. I know that
Yeah,
much.
but when it's time for the ball to be bouncing, it's time for it to be over with. But definitely, so it's good to still see those guys still playing.
Well, I wanted to also touch upon some of your professional career. Again, I know you were picked by the Golden State Warriors. Now they signed you to a two-way contract. Is that what happened? Or
They didn't have that in that
oh, they
time.
didn't. Okay, okay.
So times were different. I know it sounds like it's so long ago, it seems like it, but if it were be a different time period, I think if it was today, I think my experience would be different with the NBA. But I actually was drafted in the second round. I signed a 3-year deal with Golden State, and I was there on the roster, made the team um, with a multi-year deal with ambitions, and thought I was going to be able to be into the rotation or be able to play. And even Don Nelson and many other people within the front office said that I was going to be in the plans long term for him. But they had some injuries to the roster, particularly Monte Ellis went down with an injury, and which required him to have to be on the injured reserve. And at that particular time, you can only have 15 guys on the roster. And then once you put someone on the injured reserve, you can still have 15. When he got a little bit healthier, they had to take him off of the roster, and you had to take someone else off of that 15-man roster. Unfortunately, it ended up being me. There was also
Hmm.
some other types of you know, disagreements within the organization as there was a changeover in power. And I was just one of the casualties of it. And,
Oh,
one thing I look back on it is that I always felt that I had the ability to definitely play on that level and play for a long time. And in my first preseason game that I ever got into the game against Oklahoma City Thunder, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, all of these guys who are young players just like me, I had first bit of action, have 12 points and 13 rebounds in about 20 something minutes of playing time. And I always felt that I could play, but it was just a matter is when you see in the NBA and how it works, and that there's only 450 jobs, and your veteran players are going to play, and things of that nature. You kind of have to wait your turn. But unfortunately for me, I sat there on the bench for several months. They sent me down to the G League or the D League at that time to play with the Bakersfield Jam before they brought me back up, and just never ever got a chance to get a jersey and get called over to get into the game. One thing that I always hate about my professional career is that I didn't actually get any legitimate 82 game minutes in the real regular season game. To say that I did it, I mean, I was right there. As I mentioned, I had the guaranteed contract. So, you get that aspect of it. But at the same time, to not get in the game is something that you say, man, you wish that you could have had that opportunity. But it's how it goes. But I go from there. And after that, I decide after leading the D League in rebounds and double doubles the entire year, 2008 was kind of a recession year. And it was a tough year. There was not many call ups made from the G League to the NBA, maybe just a handful. So after I went ahead and stayed the entire year in the D League, I decided my second year that I had so many offers from overseas that
oh, okay.
I was going to try to get my way back into the NBA by way of Europe, and that's kind of how it got going that I end up leaving from Golden State.
Yeah, but I know when you look at everything, you had an extremely successful career in Europe. I mean, again, I know obviously you want to be in the NBA and you prefer that, but it seems like you had a lot of success, and I'm hoping that you enjoyed your time over there, given everything that you accomplished.
Yeah, what happened honestly is that after I said my first year, I ended up playing, with the Warriors, and then I finished in with the Dakota Wizards in the D League. And after that, I ended up playing in the summer league with the Orlando Magic and the Denver Nuggets. And this is 2009. And in the Orlando Summer League, I'm playing with the Magic and getting a lot of interest from some NBA teams. But then I had some teams in Europe who wanted to offer to sign me and also give me an NBA out in the contract. So I had a team in Spain offer me, and then it ended up being a really good team. And after the summer league, I didn't have the offers that I wanted in the NBA. So I signed the deal to go to Spain. And after one season in Spain, I was what they called, I was like their newcomer of the year. And I was one of the top 5 players in the league. And this was my rookie year over there. I was 23 years old. I had an outstanding year. This was considered the best league in the world outside of the NBA. So I ended up going from there playing in CB Granada was that team. I was there, and Joe Ingles, who's still playing, was a rookie with me. One of my buddies, he was on the team with me, and Jimmy Hunter was a player, played at the University of Memphis. He was the veteran on the team, and we had one of the best seasons in the standings that organization ever had. And as I mentioned, I was one of the top players in the league. And the next year, I was signed to a multi-year contract to a European giant, Maccabi Tel Aviv. So once I got to that point at 24 years old or 23 years old, uh, when I was coached by David Blatt, who ended up coaching.
Oh,
Yeah,
the Cavs. He went to the Cavs for a year.
right, right. He was the coach who signed me to Maccabi when I was 23 years old. I got to a position where I was on such a high level club, and at 24, we were playing for a EuroLeague championship, the biggest championship of them all over there, and I was MVP in the playoffs in that round. It got to a point where I was just at the highest levels, and it was almost like the NBA wasn't even, something for my time anymore because I was in a good situation. So it's something where people, when they don't have any knowledge of Europe and don't have any knowledge of the EuroLeague, they look at it as it was some type of letdown. But honestly, I was in a situation where I had found such a great situation and so much early success that it was just probably the smarter decision to just hold where I was in one of the top jobs and top situations in the game abroad.
So how much different is the game in the EuroLeague compared to the game in the States? Or is there a difference? Because I know people talk about now in the NBA that you see such an influx of the European or international players coming in, and now your top stars are the ones from there. Could you see that starting to blossom at the time you were there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, here's the thing. The top players in the EuroLeague can play in the NBA, and many of them have had NBA experience. Americans just don't have much knowledge on anything
Okay.
outside of United States basketball. But the top players can easily be rotational guys and maybe even starters, depending on the situation in the NBA, as that was for me at the prime of my career. The big difference of it is it's a lifestyle adjustment, and the lifestyle of a situation where if you're playing in the EuroLeague, you play one game a week, and that's going to be the midweek
Oh,
game where you play maybe on Thursday night. That might be the EuroLeague game. Then on the weekend, you're going to play your own domestic league game. So if you're playing in
oh,
Spain, for example, you're going to play a Spanish league team on Sunday around noon. But then on Wednesday or Thursday, you're going to play a EuroLeague game. So you might be playing a team that's in France or Germany or Russia. And that's how the schedule goes. Within that, most teams you're going to be practicing, and some teams might not play on that highest level in the EuroLeague, and they just only play in their own domestic league, so they're only going to play one game a week, which is going to be on Saturday or Sunday. So generally, you're going to practice every day, and for a couple of days a week, you're going to practice twice a day.
wow.
So you're going to have a morning practice, which will comprise of drill work and shooting and skill development. And then you'll come back in the evening, like let's say it's on a Monday or a Tuesday, like a day after you had Sunday off because you played on Saturday. You're going to have Monday or Tuesday, and you're going to have two practices, one in the morning and the evening. And you're going to come back in the evening, you're going to scrimmage and play a little bit and go over your sets and all of that kind of stuff. So the difference between European basketball and American basketball is that compared to how it is with AAU basketball and the professional ranks, you're going to practice probably 6 times for every game that you play in Europe. Whereas in America, you're going to have 6 games for every practice. And it starts at the youth level, from kids who are 11, 10, 11 years old. So when you see guys like Luka Doncic and, Nikola Jokic and all of these other really good foreign players, they've had so much more skill development. They've had so much more training and teaching. They've had so much more film study that when they do have the athletic ability to pair with that skill set, then you have these special players. And it's not surprising to guys like myself who played in the EuroLeague for so long. I've played against all of those guys. I played against Luka Doncic when he was 16 years old, and he was
Oh,
phenomenal.
wow.
So it's like it's not a surprise to players like myself to see that stuff come out. I had another guy who played with me in Alabama, John Deal, played with me a couple of years at Alabama. He asked me, "Did I play against Luke?" I said, "Yeah." I mean, we all knew then when you played against him when he was 16 years old that the kid could play. So it's not a shocker to us guys who have that type of European experience.
Wow, I never realized the ratio of practice to games, but that makes sense. Why a lot of the, like you said, the when you have the athleticism, but you put in the time with the practice, no wonder you're coming over such an all around game. I
And,
mean, yeah, that's incredible.
and it's not just the all around game; it's also the environment within the locker room. If you look at the age of players in the NBA, the locker rooms are very young. But if you look in Europe and other places all over the world, it's going to be more veterans on the top teams, players in their 30s. You might even have people close to their 40s, married with families. The conversations, the approach and professionalism to going about your business is a little bit more mature. So these guys come over after being exposed in that situation far more mature, and the atmospheres in which they play in also are far more rowdy. And the NBA is more of a commercial type situation where if you're playing a game in Greece or Serbia or Tel Aviv, Israel, many of the places that are top level home environments, I mean, they are something that you really, really have to know how to be able to handle that type of pressure to play well. So, I mean, playing in these arenas in the States is nothing. It's not a hostile environment at all.
Oh, so it's even more difficult than going to Neville Arena in Auburn.
That Neville Arena is nothing. I mean, listen,
Oh,
like
wow.
if you go on YouTube and you go look at some of these clubs in the EuroLeague, Panathinaikos, Olympiakos in Greece, Partizan Belgrade, Red Star Belgrade in Serbia, some of the Turkish teams, Galatasaray, Istanbul that I played for, Maccabi Tel Aviv in Israel. You go look at their environments, just go YouTube that, and you'll see what's going on. You talk about flares in the stands and fires, and in some place you play, they're not kid friendly. I mean, I've been places where I've been, you know, you have to come into the arena and there's armed security all around the court and escorting you into the building. There'll be things happen after a bad call where there's protests and things thrown on the court where they have to stop the game and get the debris off the court. Players have been hit. They might not even sell concessions in some of these places because they might even throw the stuff on the court. There is a different type of atmosphere. It's not a family friendly thing with luxury suites that people in America, like to expect. It's just basketball and sport. It's true sport when you talk about high level European basketball and soccer and other sports.
Yeah, that
It's
the
true.
environment the environment you're describing sounds like all the things you hear about, all the legendary soccer matches and rivalries and fights and hooligans and all that stuff. I didn't
Right.
realize that
That's
that mentality goes to every sporting event.
it's the same. Now it's not everywhere, but it is, in some countries on some of the teams of that nature. That is just how it is. But to me, it was a great environment. I loved every bit of it. I mean, I look back sometime and can't believe that I played in atmospheres like this, packed arenas like that. I mean, but it was a lot of fun and I enjoyed it all. And a lot of times I wish that American atmospheres were similar.
So that, well, you know what? That explains everything why Luca right now wins on the road and doesn't phase him one bit. I mean, that makes perfect sense. If that's the environment he was raised, even as a younger player, if that's what he was used to playing on the road, then it's no big deal for him to go down to Boston or any place else to try to get a win.
Yeah, I mean, there's some of the things that you might hear from fans saying to you, it can't be repeated. I mean, it's just
Oh,
you
wow.
have to, it's just you have to tone it out. You just have to play. I mean, it's a different type of environment.
Well, let me ask this too. I want to make sure I got your feedback on this too. As you were finishing your career, when did the idea of transitioning into broadcasting? When did this happen? When or is this something that you had always thought about? Because I believe you're a public relations major, aren't you?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed the communication side of things, and I kind of was fortunately just fell into this opportunity that I got a phone call when I was at home. I just recently kind of stepped away from the games. They asked if I wanted to call some games at Alabama for the men's games. And then I was approached if I could call the women's games as well. I said, absolutely, I would love to. And after a little bit of time, is I've got some positive reviews and said, you can, if you want to continue to pursue this, this is something you might be able to do. But I've had people to tell me in the past, that I might can do this potentially, and it's been something that I have really enjoyed to do. That I take a lot of pride in. I enjoyed the film study. I'm still a basketball guy. I love to watch a lot of sports. I love to continue to challenge myself and learn. So it keeps me around the game and gives me the same level of competitiveness that I needed that when I was playing. It's not that same level, but I'm able to keep the same mental approach that I had when I was playing, and that's really a joy.
I can't tell you how excited I was personally, and a lot of other Alabama fans when we saw you finally get into the SEC Network studio. We hope this year you're going to be there a lot more, and actually out also providing analysis on even more games because, again, I think you do a great job. Let me ask you this: when you're there in the studios, how much I don't know razzing goes on between you and the other guys when your school either wins or loses when you're playing, like say Alabama's playing Auburn and you're there with Fish.
Well, it doesn't happen too often. I mean, you know what? You want to see your team do well, but at the same time, you have to be a professional and you're trying to provide true analysis. For myself, after playing 13 years professionally, you end up playing with so many guys throughout your career from different schools that were your rivals. I mean, so I played with guys from Tennessee, I played with guys, you know, uh, from all over the SEC, from LSU, Ole Miss, all of these guys. You play against them, you get to be friends with them, so you get to find out the human side of them. So the rivalry is still strong, but at the same time, you've had probably longer moments and experiences with these guys abroad as maybe teammates than you did when you competed. The six times that you played when you were in school. But for me, I take pride in trying to give honest and unbiased analysis when I'm talking about schools. And unfortunately for me, Alabama has been playing great basketball since I've been on the air. So when I talk about it, it might come across a little bit as a homer, but at the same time, I think it's just
Nah,
in this
nah.
particular situation. But I take pride in trying to give analysis about the game to educate the person at home watching you, to put you inside the mind of the player that's on the court, as well as what the coach could be going through, who's watching from the sidelines.
Well, and you brought up a good point too. Yeah, if you had broken into the SEC network maybe, 11, 12 years ago, like back in 2013, when no school in the state of Alabama made the NCAA tournament, you wouldn't have much to talk about when it came to
Right.
either Alabama or Auburn. It'd be pretty desolate as far as trying to find anything positive to say. But what does this current renaissance, and not just Alabama, by the way, and again, I don't want to give too much credit to Auburn, but part of me deep down is actually glad that Auburn hired Bruce Pearl when they did. And even though I didn't want Auburn to get to the Final Four, Auburn getting to the Final Four really shook the administration in Alabama to get their act together and say we need to take basketball serious. So from that standpoint, I'm okay with Auburn, raising the ante, and I'm glad that Alabama's answered. But what does it mean to you now that at the SEC network, when you see such high competitive, I mean, the SEC put a record number of teams in the tournament last year, and we're projected to do it again this year. There's the talent is just everywhere, and the coaching is such a high level right now that I can't remember anything like this. Not even in the '80s when I grew up, do I believe that the coaching and the talent is this high.
Well, I loved it, and if you followed me throughout the year, I said probably since the beginning of SEC play that the league was wide open. And I was thrilled to see that my prediction that anybody could win it, that you could come down to
Yep.
the last day and could have potentially been a five-way tie. You want to talk about pulling for something in the studio? That was something that I was hoping to see. I wanted to see the five-way tie to see how that was going to be. this past season. But it's been a joy to watch and to follow. When you calling games, you get to go on the road and you get to meet these coaches and pick their brain a little bit in the one-on-one meetings to talk about things and watch the way they conduct their practices and shoot arounds. As a basketball guy, I enjoy it. Now, the SEC is very strong right now, has really good coaches, has some good depth. But my one thing that I want to see from the SEC is Alabama was able to crack into the Final Four. It's very important that they're going to have a team who can make a stand and finally win the whole thing. You know, it's been since
Ah,
12 since Kentucky has gotten it done for the SEC. And when you're constantly being told that this is the best conference with the best athletes, with the best NBA prospects, with the best coaches, you're going to have a team to step up and win a national championship for the conference. The drought has been too long. You'd have several teams that can do it, but you have to make sure that you have a roster that is built for winning 6 games in March. And that is a challenge that the conference definitely is going to have to figure out. And they're going to have to get it done, I think, in the next couple of years to really continue to solidify their position as trying to say that this is the top basketball conference in the country.
I know because the consensus, obviously, for the last couple of years is it's been the Big 12. They keep pushing the Big 12. Obviously, UConn's an outlier because they're just a dominant team, but I know everyone keeps touting the Big 12. So I think there's a lot of quality players and coaches for this upcoming season. So let's see if the SEC can really, really establish itself. And I agree with you on that one too. The SEC needs to have a team breakthrough and win it all. And of course, my preference. So why can't it be Alabama? Coach Oates has already broken every other glass ceiling that we had. This might as well go ahead and end the last one. That would be great as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it can be huge and it can happen, and when you look at the teams that are getting to the Final Four, you just have to get to that point and get to the Final Four. You see it, obviously, it can be wide open. It's not a situation where, the traditional powers are dominating the Final Four. Now, Connecticut has obviously been able to be on a tear as probably the best program in the last 25 years that they have self-proclaimed, and it's actually probably true with the most national
Yep.
championships. But if you look at the rest of the field that has been able to get to the Final Four as well, it's a matter of time before somebody else can break through, and a team that doesn't have that history of winning championships can get it done.
Well, let me ask one final question because man, the hour's flown by. But uh, what are your thoughts as a former player and now as an analyst? And again, I know right now all the schools they need resources and they need the money for NIL. But how do you feel about new arena or not a new arena? Is Coleman sufficient? Do we need to just modify what we have? What would you like to see done as far as facilities for the basketball team?
Well, I'm a historical type guy. I'll say first off, if Coleman Coliseum is good enough to continue to be able to help recruit top tier program talent as it has under Nate Oates, McDonald's All Americans, top transfers, long home winning streaks, then obviously the building has no, you know, determination, has no impact on the product on the court. So I don't think there's a need to make a change if the product on the court is still winning. Now, from a fan standpoint and a game day experience standpoint, then yes, I would say that Coleman Coliseum being erected, I think in 1964, it's time for a new facility. When you maybe have more bells and whistles for the fans who want to enjoy a little bit more comfort, want to enjoy a little bit more of luxury at games. Yes, that can be something that would be enjoyable as the fan experience. Now the players, they don't know. They're not sitting in the stand. They never nothing is good.
No.
The facilities are great for players. You have everything that you need as far as training. You have everything, every amenity. But from the fan experience, I'm sure it would be much better to have something nicer. Now, for me, with it being the University of Alabama, I know a lot of people have said that they believe that you want to have a smaller venue, something compared to like Neville Arena and other places. But for me, I think with it being the University of Alabama and you're in the best conference in the Southeastern Conference, You are the school that is the flagship school that everybody is looking up to in every sport. You build, not only do you build something of the same size, which you already have, you build something bigger.
Oh,
And you,
bigger. Okay.
I think you go bigger is what you do. You establish that you are the biggest and the baddest program in the league, and you're serious about your sports and your venues, and you want more people to come in and pack it out. And if you build it, they will come. That would be the mentality that I would have. And if there was an upper deck or a second tier that you didn't think you could have enough in that bowl, you do it something similar as they'd have in Texas, and you just keep the curtains down, and you can fill up the bottom side. But I'm not the person for downsizing. I think if you're going to be the biggest school in the state and the name brand school or whatnot, then you have the best facilities, bar none.
Well, you know what? I like this take that you just said. Now, I never thought about going bigger, but I never agreed with going smaller. When they first announced the first rendition and it had seating capacity of like, I think it was like 10,300, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. You're cutting out 5,000 people on the weekends because during the SEC regular season schedule on those Saturdays, you're going to get 15,000 people in there
Right.
because they come. Now, the midweek games are depending on the time and maybe a little more difficult, but I always like, whoa, I don't want to go down to 10,000. If you're going to do that, then at least keep it at like 12,500, 13,000, but please don't go down to 10,000. But never thought about let's go to 17, 18,000.
Why
But
not? I mean,
yeah,
what I mean, if you go to Rupp Arena has close to 20, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in there. Thompson Bowling or Food City Center, as they call it now, has pushing 20. Arkansas has 17, 18,000, somewhere in there. I mean, if you're the University of Alabama, the school that you are trying to let everyone know that you are a top level program in everything, just like you would in Bryant Denny, you want to have a large number with that one. I think it should be 15,000 plus.
I
And
like I like this. I like that idea. But
this is
yeah,
just what I think. And from the fan experience, if you want to have the luxury suites, if you want to have all of the other things that make people really want to enjoy it, then if I'm going to spend the money, I think I would go ahead and get the biggest thing I would get. That's the way I would view it. I wouldn't go smaller.
well, you're talking about the premium seating and things like that, and of course that's important now because those are additional revenue generators. But I always thought for basketball, yes, you want to have that, but just to reconfigure it to where you can get the seats as close to the court as possible, and reconfigure it so you get your students along one side of the baseline, so you can really get that atmosphere. And then I agree with you, keep it at 15,000. But once you reconfigure the seats and get everybody closer, that helps tremendously as well. So I like that. Yeah, keep it at 15, maybe even go to 17, but get those seats as close to the court as
Yeah.
possible.
Get them close, get them in tiers where they're kind of looking down on top of the people, so you can feel the impact. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't reduce the numbers. I would want as many people in the state that want to get a ticket and come down to the game and be in Tuscaloosa to be at the game. But I will say this: Coleman Coliseum is a historical venue.
It is. I agree.
You have people who have high level coaches have been there. A lot of talent has played on that floor. It's historical. And if I was to challenge the fan base, I would say, hey, you can make an impact and make that arena loud and make it a tough place to play if you just get on your feet and support it. This is not a place to come and sit down and lounge. This is a sporting event. Like, come and be the sixth man on the court for your team and be involved in the game, and because if you have a new arena and you're not being involved in the game, then what
Yeah.
difference did it make?
So, and I'll just say this from my personal experience. So, I've been buying season tickets for like 11 years. Been taking my daughter, since she was like 4 years old. Until this past year, now that she's like a freshman in high school, she had only missed 2 games. So we don't miss games. It always just drives me crazy in November and December when I look out there at those games, even on Saturday games, and you see basically it looks like Swiss cheese and what would be considered the premium seating, and they don't come. And that always just irritated me because I don't know, it just drove me crazy. And then even during the SEC schedule, sometimes when I look down there, then you'll see like, especially when you play Kentucky, well, there's blue everywhere, and I'm like, well, I see some of the Tide Pride people just sold their tickets to on the secondary market. It just frustrates me because I would never do that. And for
Right.
some of those seats that I see taken, I would have given anything to be able to get those seats. So that's one thing that does irritate me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have an opportunity to make it a great home court advantage. I mean, go and support the team. And even when you do it in Coleman Coliseum, I'm telling you, it's an intimidating place to play. People don't really win in Tuscaloosa as much as people think. So I mean, it's a good thing going. I mean, but it might be time for a new venue. I wouldn't be against either one of them, to be honest. The only thing I'm going to be for is get to the games and be standing on your feet and try to make a difference.
Well, considering what this coaching staff has done for the last 5 years and the trajectory they seem to be on, people need to come out and see this because they are going to miss history if they do not. That's all I
Right.
can say about that. You need to come see this because we know for a fact this doesn't happen very often.
No.
So you need to come see the players that are coming through right now at a historical level. You need to see what the team is doing. I know you had mentioned this will be my last question. I know you had mentioned again. We talked about the transfer portal, and you have a lot of players now play 1 year and leave, or maybe 2 years at the most. So different when you played, and I do miss the fact that in the older days you saw player development. Kids would come in as freshmen. Most of the time they stayed until juniors and seniors. So I kind of miss that aspect of it. But I know coaches have to do what they have to do to build a roster now, given the rules of the game. So you gain some, you lose some. But I dare say that this coaching staff has perfected the art of, I don't know, roster management. Would you say?
Yeah, they've done a good job. I mean, they've adjusted. They've done a really good job of understanding how to identify what you need to the identity of your program. They have a style that you can plug and play. So they understand what they specifically need to be successful immediately and to also have a style that they can expedite the learning curve and get the wins they need early in the season to be competitive and have good seedings moving in the NCAA tournament. It's a challenge. I would love to see the development of players as well, but at the same time, it's a new era. This is just college sports is like professional sports, and if I'm a fan, you're just going to have to just say look forward to a new roster on every team every single year.
Yep.
Don't try to
Yep.
get connected to a player and expect them to be there unless there's some type of change in which the governance of it. Then it's going to be like how it is in Europe. People understand in Europe you're going to have a new team every year, and most players are going to sign year-to-year contracts, maybe a 2, maybe a 3-year deal at the most, and just expect the roster to be different. It's going to change every single year, but Alabama's done a really good job of making the adjustment. Now, the thing you talk about the NIL and transfer portal, the one thing that everyone talks about is they talk about a lot of these things being about player mobility and helping out the player. I don't think that the player wins in these situations. Now, everyone else looks at it and says, well, yeah, players are not getting paid. They need to get paid. They need to be compensated. Definitely, this is a win for the player. I don't think it's a win for the player. I think it's a win for the player when you can learn from one coach, when you can be developed, when you do have some type of connection to a fan base, to an organization, to a school, to a coach for multiple years. So when you are done playing, if you're fortunate enough to play professionally, that you have a place that you can go back to and have a connection to a fan base who will remember the effort that you gave them, and potentially even maybe it might be something that can help you professionally in another career. Um, Kids will struggle to have that as they move forward in the future. They will struggle to have, who do I make a phone call to where I need some advice? Who's going to reach out to me and wants me to have something to be affiliated with them? When you're playing for 2 and 3 and 4 schools and you have no loyalty to anyone, you might look back and say that the loyalty was what you needed when the ball stopped bouncing. Because when it's over, like the only thing you have is your memories, and you want them to be good ones. And that is someplace that you cannot quantify. You can't put a dollar amount on that for going from one school to the other and collecting jerseys and being here at a different place as compared to the one guy that's been with one situation and he can end up being a legend just because of the affiliation over time.
Man, I couldn't agree with you more. And I know me personally and a lot of Alabama fans, we appreciate the fact that you gave 3 years to the University of Alabama. And we always know Richard Hendrix as a former Alabama basketball player. We don't remember you as Richard Hendrix, who transferred in from North Carolina his junior year for 1 year, or Richard Hendrix, who played as a freshman, got to the NCAA tournament, but then went to the Final Four playing for Indiana. So it means something. I agree with you that too. I
Right.
mean, you are beloved in the state, and everyone who follows Alabama basketball knows who Richard Hendrix is, and I believe that's important. I really do.
And it's important to me, and I appreciate everyone who definitely supported me as a player. The only thing that I could ever have asked for after a great career in high school and then playing in my home state and trying my best is that I hope that when people watched me play for the University of Alabama, that they felt that I gave it everything that I had and that I competed, left it all out there on the court and tried my best to win games for the team. Unfortunately, it might not happen, but the spirit and the passion was there, and the drive, determination as well, and consistency. And that's what I like to hang my hat on.
Well, Richard, I cannot thank you enough for this. This has been so much fun. I mean, I'm seriously, the hour has flown by, but we could probably do another hour, but I know we probably want to go to bed because I think you had baseball and everything else. But again, I want to thank you for all the support you did for us here at Crimson, Crimson Crossover, Tide Hoops History. I appreciated getting to meet you in person finally there at the Final Four, and look forward to running into you more at Alabama games and maybe more NCAA tournaments.
Absolutely. We have to have me back. This has been a
Oh,
joy.
absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
definitely have to be back because, we got stories for days. We got to tell them all too. People need to hear them.
Absolutely. And we would love to be able to do that, Richard. But again, thank you so much and have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right.